Well, thank you, Jan, to ask this question. Actually, French entrepreneurs are very concerned about the invoicing part of the VIDA directive. It's been a very hot subject in recent years. Large companies obviously got prepared internally or via outside advisors. Obviously, you know, the French regime was supposed to be in place on July 1, 2024. So there was a sort of semi-panic, I should say, with this preparation and this deadline, which was very short for them. Now that the French project on e-invoicing is going to be postponed, there's a bit of less stress, it's relaxing a bit, but companies do get prepared. And the good news is that the small and medium-sized companies now are aware that there's something coming up, that their accountants talk to them about it, so it's getting in the landscape on that. The other part of the VIDA proposal, the single VAT registration, all this, to be honest, people don't speak too much about it, and only large companies having a VAT specialist are really aware that this is coming up. But today, I mean, the big thing to swallow was the invoicing, and that was more than enough on the plate. Well, on Pillar 2, it's much of a platform problem. Again, it's the platforms are fairly well aware of that. We've been having and seeing some major tax audits in France. Just to name a few, there was Uber, there was, I mean, all this, this has happened, this is in the landscape. Now everybody is back to compliance. Compliance is a hot subject for that part of the economy. As I mentioned during the conference, the French tax authorities have released a report beginning of September where they have identified that the tax fraud was, the VAT gap, the French VAT gap was between 6 to 10 billion. Obviously, it means that this is also a hot subject, but platforms are well aware. We have huge reporting obligations even before the VIDA directive is implemented. Therefore, it's in the landscape, and people just have in mind that they can't escape it. Yeah.
What are those pressing issues?
Yes. Well, the pressing issues that we have in France is the toll manufacturing. France is a country that has converted its industry a lot into a service industry, and for the heavy industry, I should say, they become toll manufacturers, implementing or changing goods, moving goods for others. As we've seen this morning, the toll manufacturing is not in the VIDA directive, so that's a bit of a problem. Remains a problem because there's no facilitation, there's no scheme for that. So that's one problem, and I would like to, should the EU Commission do something about a final regime one of those days, that the toll manufacturing be included in that. The second thing that I see more and more as a practitioner is the consequences of TP adjustment in the VAT environment. As you know, there's lots of appetite from the tax authorities to reassess, to challenge the transfer pricing documentation for corporate tax purposes, which is fine, we understand that. Also at OECD, there's this Pillar 2, eventually one day some kind of a Pillar 1, we don't really know. Anyway, there's more pressure on the transfer pricing side. We have more and more difficulties to adapt the VAT consequences of the TP adjustments. And that's a major issue. It's becoming heavy because the TP adjustments are more frequent. They not only concern very big multinationals, but also concern medium-sized, even fairly small companies. So it's becoming, all the businesses are global, and there's more aggressivity on TP adjustments. So I think it's very important that there's more work to be done on TP adjustments, so that at the end of the day, in a way or another, it becomes neutral. Today, there's nothing in the legislation, in the draft legislation. It needs to be worked out, and we have national answers on that. And we already have seen cases where VAT was not neutral, further to TP adjustment, not to mention the customs valuation rules also. But it's very important that we get something so that the businesses find a good solution, so that the VAT is neutral, particularly if there's 100% valuable transactions and 100% valuable businesses. Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, I do teach in 5 universities in France. The one where I intervene the most is the Paris University, Paris the second, where I teach in 2 tax programs, and I do conferences in other universities in the countryside. It's a part of the job which is very dear to me, I have to say, because students are the workforce for tomorrow. They're full of hope, and when I look at the amount of information that they have to digest as students, sometimes I feel quite puzzled. I have to admit that they can digest so many rules and so many things in so many areas of the tax. So I think it's important for the students to get an international perspective. There's no business that is only national today. We live in a world which is open. The rules tend to facilitate the businesses to go cross-border. So obviously for businesses, it's very important that, and for young ones, it's very important to be acquainted, to be familiar with the international arena, of course, to speak English absolutely fluently. This is the language of the business, and to make contacts, to attend university cross-border. Of course, there's Erasmus, but there's also more than Erasmus. When you are at the level of the master tax programs, there are very good master tax programs in Europe right now. I'm thinking of the Vienna tax program. I'm thinking of tax programs in Leiden, in Mannheim with Professor English. Also in the UK, even though there's no longer in the EU, there's still something which is closer to us, and it's. I always strongly advise the students to go abroad, at least for a year or a year and a half, and to do another tax program in their training. I think it's very important and critical for their future career.